Perfect. Salute, and welcome back to the Black Ocean. Now, when we get deep in with your host, the one and only Great Black Shark. Yes, sir, family. Let me tell you something. This is going to be one of the most important broadcasts that I have ever done on this channel, because by the time it's over tonight, for those of you that will be joining us here and those that will catch this on the playback, it's going to put a great deal into context for you about not only the political game that both parties play in America. It's going to make sense regarding how the media backs them up as well. Oh, yes, you're going to get a hell of a political education over here tonight. And before we even get started, let me go ahead and read this, what you see on your screen here. We're going to read it together. Because the reason why I have this up here, you probably wonder, what, GBS, why do you have the definition of whataboutism up here on the screen? Well, this is to go ahead and get it out of the way at the beginning of the broadcast for those that come in here. Well, what you think the Republicans gonna do for us then? We got to read this, because we say this time and time again to those that spout that nonsense. We're criticizing mainly the Democrats because that's who's in the position of power. Republicans were in the position of power right now, we would have most of the criticism for them. Moreover, beyond that, historically, for the past 50, 60 plus years, most of the Black American community has voted Democrat. Those are the main two reasons why those of us in new Black media are talking about primarily the Democrats. So I just want to get that out of the way before the slow crowd comes over here with that nonsense, okay? Moderators, y'all know what to do, because this is an intelligent space. Don't tolerate unintelligence over here and willful ignorance. It may be entertaining at times, but for me, and let me touch on this briefly. For me, my platforms, I pride myself on being able to educate my people to counter ignorance and unintelligence, okay? So I really don't have much tolerance for it. Now, is there a time and a place for that? Yeah, the goofballs have their place as entertainment, but when we're trying to get important information out, they don't really have a place over here. So I just want to get it out of the way. So let's read this definition, right? Whataboutism is a noun, and the definition reads: a conversational tactic in which a person responds to an argument or attack by changing the subject to focus on someone else's misconduct, implying that all criticism is invalid because no one is completely blameless. Okay? Because y'all gonna see here tonight, and some of what we have to review, you're gonna see some sad examples of that in our community, but I'm gonna take a different approach to breaking that down when we come to that part of the broadcast, okay? So if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribed and shared. you may want to take the opportunity to do so, because like I said, if you miss this one, it's going to be up for playback, but you might want to catch this one live, okay? So let me go over here to the chat room and greet my esteemed guests that I see joining us. Let me see here. Excuse me. Make sure I can see clearly here. Okay. I see Patricia Slade in the building. Stun Zed is joining us. Lakeisha Morehouse. Stay Woke. Chief X Ali. I see my good brother Hot Tub Tony. Long time no see, brother. Glad you're back joining us. Salute to my good sister Mrs. L and her husband. Seven Scales in the building. I see the brother Hot One joining us. Patricia Jenkins, the awesome librarian here. Jesse Paris, aka Shay and Krumer. Bruce is joining us in the building. Derek Parker's over here. D. Foster. Sister Devin Haley. My good brother Lee Holmes, CRU Reality. The computer maker and beat maker in the building. And I see Blue Jay 3000 joining us. Salute and welcome to all of you that will be joining us later on in attendance here tonight. So now, family, now that we got the preliminaries out the way, I want you to pay close attention to the first half of this broadcast, especially, okay? Because this right here is going to sum up a great deal of what you see in Black America. Now, for those of you that are in my age range and older, a lot of this you're going to already be familiar with. Some of it you may not be, but to the younger Black people that are subscribed to my channel, that come over here and tune in to see what I'm talking about, this is going to arm you with the main weapon that both political parties absolutely dread you having. Because let me take the time to say this to the young Black people, okay? I understand that if you, and when I say young, let me clarify what I'm saying. I'm talking about those of you that are 20 on to like, I'll say 28, all right? When I say young Black people. I understand that a lot of times when people address you about things, they talk at you instead of to you. And that's one thing that I understand, that when you're talking to young people, if you're talking at them, especially Generation Z, okay, you're not going to get too far with that. The mark of a good teacher, okay, the mark of a good teacher is not to ridicule, not to just over chastise someone, but to make sure that when you're trying to share information with them, one, let them ask questions. And number two, you try to present it in a way that they can understand it and show them how it's relevant to their own future and their own lives, okay? Now, if you're the type of person that's trying to teach somebody something and you're not able to do that, you're not going to get very far with trying to teach anybody, because people are not going to listen to you, especially the younger crowd, okay? So that's one thing I want to put out there for older people that call yourself trying to teach young folks something. You got to, first of all, deal with people with what you want, which is respect, okay? Now, the way that you earn the respect of the young people, first and foremost, you have to be about what you say you're about. And then they have to understand that you really do care about them. Not that you're just talking at them, trying to flex how much you know. Because, see, this hour of our history that we're in right now, family, this is do or die. This is for a quarter. We need all hands on deck across all age ranges of society. Now, let me take the time to say this, too, to a lot of you sisters, okay? Because y'all going to definitely learn something from this broadcast tonight. Oh, trust me. They're going to put all kinds of age restrictions on this one. I see it coming. Just know if they take it down, it will be on the Patreon, and I'll actually put it on Rumble, okay? I'll put it on both of those so that you'll be able to have access to it. It's coming. Because, see, the one thing that they don't want y'all to have an understanding of, or should I say get the mastery of, let me say it that way. They don't want y'all to get the mastery of one thing. It's a 4-letter word. Now, we all know that when it comes to 4-letter words, most of those are bad, right? Well, this 4-letter word that they count on you sisters especially being up under is F-E-A-R. Fear. Fear. You understand me? They understand that if they can make the women of our community in particular afraid of anything, let me tell you something. When you're fearful, you can be easily manipulated because you'll go for anything that you think is going to take that fear away. Now, when you have the enemy, okay, in this case, it would be white supremacy, the system of white supremacy. When you have the enemy trying to make you come to them for a solution, that's called a Hegelian dialectic. If you don't know what that is, you need to look that up and study that. Basically, in layman's terms, the very entity or people that are causing the problem will also present you with a solution as well, okay? Talk about something demonic. We're going to get deep over here tonight, okay? But by the time this broadcast is over, I guarantee you, most on-code sisters and some of you that are off-code, You might be a sister that's a Democrat. She a hardcore. You probably like, ain't nothing you gonna tell me, GBS, that's gonna sway me from vote blue no matter who. And if you say that, no problem, sister. I ask you to do one thing. Stick around until the end of this broadcast and then see if you still feel the same way. So now that I've got that out the way, we're going to get started with tonight's lesson here. And trust me, family, this right here, you ain't going to see too many people put this in the context that I put it in. This one right here is going to be what you use for people that are in good faith about not knowing what to do, or if they don't understand different things. I'm going to give you everything you need to reach those particular people. Keyword, those people. I'm not talking about changing somebody that's stuck on doing whatever they want to do, no matter how harmful it is to them and the community. You're not going to reach those people, and you don't have to, okay? But for those that genuinely want to learn and want to get answers about what to do in this climate that we're in here politically, I'm going to provide them for you. So with that said, we're going to get started.
Why politicians lie? The simple answer is because we let them. We have the power to prevent it. But if you don't use the power, if you sit back and say, I don't care, then they'll lie. And they have good reasons to. I mean, would it make sense for Tony Blair, say, to stand up now and say, please set up a war crimes tribunal to try me for the supreme international crime of aggression? Would that make sense? Or for him to say, please throw me out of my position as a special representative for the Middle East Quartet because I'm doing absolutely nothing for peace but enriching myself? Or would it make sense for, and you can run down the line. There's very good reasons either to lie or just not to tell the truth. If politicians told the truth, I think, you decide for yourselves, I think they would be saying what I was just talking about. They would be saying, we don't care at all about your security or your safety or your survival. We care about our power and about the power of the concentrated domestic power, which in our societies means basically the corporate sector. Now, it's not 100% the case, of course, but it will be, there's a strong tendency for it to be the case for the people who reach the top. That's how they reach the top. But the real answer is we let them.
Back around 2000.
Now, for those of you that don't know who that was speaking, that was Professor Noam Chomsky, okay? Now, let me go ahead and give this disclaimer also. I meant to say this at the beginning of the broadcast. What you're going to see here speaking tonight is mostly people in the dominant society. Why is that? The reason is twofold. Now, I know it's not particularly those of you in my audience, but a lot of black folks don't take it from other black people. You have to hear it from folks in the dominant society. That's number one. Number two, I'm letting them talk to you about all these things because what you're going to learn here tonight in this broadcast, the way we see politics and American society is totally different from how they see it, okay? Oh, it's totally different. So I'm bringing you these white people telling you how they think because they're discussing this information mainly for each other, okay? But you can always learn something if you study the right things and you apply what you learn to your own situation as far as the decisions that we have to make in Black America. Now, before we get to this next thing here, this is the part where it's really going to help you understand some things about where we're going here in society. There's a book called How to Lie with Statistics, okay? I'm going to say it again. There's a book called How to Lie with Statistics. You all should pick that book up and have it on every black shelf in America. I strongly recommend you have that book, especially if you're a sister out here and you was ever a part of the Vote Blue no matter who crowd. You need to read that book, okay? Now, why am I suggesting that to you? Well, I'm going to let the gentleman on your screen here explain exactly why I'm telling you to get that book in case you're saying, oh, he always talking about books. Oh, he's book this, book that. Okay, yeah, well, anytime I recommend a book to you, it's for a reason. Number one, I'm not going to recommend you nothing that I don't have on my shelf that not only have I not read all the way through, but I have applied the information in it to affect the outcome of my life and the things that I want to do and as far as navigating around certain things. So that's why I'm always recommending books for the people that actually have a problem with that Yes, we do have some of them people in society. I know not most of you here, but that's for them, okay? So I'm going to play this, and I want you to take notes on what this gentleman here is about to say.
2002, Target came to a statistician with a question, in which the answer could potentially make the company millions of dollars. They asked, using only computers, can you determine which customers are pregnant, even if they don't want us to know? And from then on, statistician Andrew Poole was in search of an algorithm to do just that. What he did was analyze the shopping patterns of expectant mothers and notice some common behaviors, like an increase in lotion purchases, vitamins, and more stuff that I know nothing about. And he uses information to not only determine which customers were likely pregnant, medical model, the statistician had a list of hundreds of thousands of women who were likely pregnant, along with their expected due date and what. From then on, Target could send coupons at just the right time over the next several months, and even after the baby was born. Now, although Target was cautious about following secrecy laws, it still might turn women away if all of a sudden they started getting coupons for like cribs and diapers and other related items when they didn't in fact tell the company that they were pregnant. So what Target did was just sprinkle these items in along with some other unrelated products when coupons arrived, so it would seem more natural. But about a year after creating this algorithm, something happened though, and this is where it gets interesting. One day a man walked into a Minnesota Target demanding to see a manager. He was very angry. And apparently what had been going on was Target was sending coupons for things like diapers and cribs and other related items to this guy's high school daughter. And he was very upset about this. He was saying things like, are you guys trying to encourage her to get pregnant? And the manager didn't really know what was going on. He of course apologized. And a few days later, the manager called the dad back to apologize again. But this time the dad wasn't so much angry, but a little more embarrassed. And I think you guys know where this is going. On the phone, the dad said, I in fact owe you an apology. There's been some things going on around here that I haven't been fully aware of. And in fact, my daughter is pregnant and she's due in August. So yes, this statistical algorithm figured out that this girl was pregnant before her dad even knew about it. That right there is the power of statistics. And we're just getting started. In 1964, an elderly woman was walking home from grocery shopping when she was all of a sudden pushed to the ground and had her purse stolen. Now, she was able to get a glimpse of the thief and saw a blonde woman in a ponytail who then fled the scene. Then there was also a man nearby who heard the screaming and saw the woman run into a yellow car that was driven by a black man who had a beard and a mustache. And yes, this is all needed for the story, by the way. A few days after the incident, police ended up catching Janet Collins and her husband Malcolm, who matched all the descriptions given by the witnesses. They were then charged with the crime and put in front of a jury. Now, since most of the evidence that could be provided for this was just from the victim and the man who saw the event and what they both witnessed, they brought in a mathematician as well to help prove the guilt of this couple. This mathematician calculated the probability of just randomly selecting a couple that was innocent but also happened to share all of these characteristics that were observed by the witnesses. Based on data, the mathematician came up with these numbers, and assuming independent events, we can multiply them all together to find the joint probability that they all happen to apply to an innocent couple. Turns out there was less than a 1 in 12 million chance that this random couple, who just happened to fit all those descriptions, was innocent. So the jury returned a guilty verdict. And this is actually a very famous case in terms of using statistics in the courtroom. Another quick example is that of Sally Clark, who was found guilty of murdering her 2 infant sons back in the 90s. Her first son died suddenly in 1996 due to unknown causes, so it was assumed it was a case of SIDS, or sudden infant death syndrome. But about a year later, she gave birth to her second son, who was then found dead 8 weeks after his birth, again of unknown causes. So after this happened and it was reported, the police ended up arresting her and her husband on suspicion of murder. During the trial, a pediatrician professor testified that the chance of 2 infants dying due to SIDS at around the same time relative to their birth was about 1 in 73 million. And again, 1 in 73 million is way beyond a reasonable doubt. So it was more likely this was an event of shaking or smothering or whatever. And Sally Clark was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. So you can see statistics has a lot of power in our world, whether it be advertising, criminal cases, and so on. But what's also really powerful and way easier to do is lie, mislead, and misinform using statistics. And you don't even have to use.
Now I want to stop it right there and remind you all why I'm showing you this in this section of the broadcast. How many of you have been in these different online spaces and you see the white supremacists come over to our spaces talking about per capita, as if black people don't understand what per capita means, okay? They come running over with percentages this, percentages that. I want you to stay close to this broadcast because I've said this many times, but I'm going to let their people tell it to you. And the next time one of them hops over there with the per capita crap, you're going to see why I've always said what I said. I'm not going to even say what I've been saying for years. Some of you already know it, but they're going to break that down here tonight. So I'm going to let him get back to it. And this is going to arm you with everything that you need when you run across the so-called goofy per capita white supremacist little groyper crowd, okay? And I'm going to have to do a broadcast on breaking down what those so-called groypers are. A lot of you probably don't even know what that is. In short order, if you've seen that goofy Pepe the Frog meme floating around, that's them. Those goofy right-wing white supremacists, okay? I'm going to put together a broadcast to break that down. But this information right here, it's very important that y'all catch everything that he's going to be saying. Let's get back to it.
Wrong data to do this. I mean, I've already done that multiple times in this video. I'm going to talk about that soon. So yes, this next part is for all you people who comment on videos before watching the entire thing, because there is more I'm going to say. But let's start off light though. In 2007 in the UK, an ad was released for Colgate that claimed the classic 80% of dentists recommend Colgate. It wasn't long before the Advertising Standard Authority of the UK ordered they abandon this claim because although it was true, they knew people would not really understand what it meant. The study that was done allowed dentists to answer with more than one toothpaste. So like dentist 1 might say, I recommend Colgate, Crest, or Oral-B. Dentist 2 might say Colgate, Crest, or Sensodyne, and similar for dentist 3, 4, and 5. In this scenario, 80% of dentists do recommend Colgate, that is true. But 100% of dentists recommend Crest in this hypothetical, and 80% recommend Oral-B as well. All of these numbers are factual, and you can make an advertisement with any of these claims. But again, we know people would not understand what they really meant. Now, for this next part, I'm going to ask you guys a question. If, let's say hypothetically, the high school dropout rates of a certain country go from 5% one year to 10%, is that a 5% increase or a 100% increase? Because if you're at 5% and you add 5, you get to 10%, obviously. But if you're making, let's say, $5 an hour and you get a 100% raise, you'll be at $10 an hour. So which one of these is it? And I'm sure many of you are saying this seems like a pointless question. Yes, you do add 5 to get to 10, but the physical amount of people who are dropping out would be increasing by 100%. Well, in the spirit of this video, let's ask something else. Which one of these paints a more accurate picture? Like, if one of these was posted in the New York Times or on Forbes or whatever, which one tells the people more about what's going on? And I'm actually curious what you guys have to say about that, because I think we're going to hear different answers from different people. But for this next part, I think we're all going to agree. What if, hypothetically, the dropout rates are 1 in a million people, and then the next year they go to 2 in a million people? So that's 0.0001% to 0.0002%. A difference of, again, 0.0001. But that's also a 100% increase in the physical amount of people dropping out. So which one of these two headlines do you think paints a better picture? Well, again, we might hear different answers, but I think we can agree the 100% makes it seem like a worse problem than it is. Like if 5 people in the whole nation are dropping out and the next year 10 people do, I wouldn't necessarily call that an epidemic just yet. Now, using numbers like this in a misleading way is actually not hypothetical because it happened a few decades ago in the UK, but not with college dropout rates, but rather a birth control pill. In 1995, the UK Committee on Safety of Medicines issued a warning that a certain type of birth control pill increased the risk of life-threatening blood clots by 100%. What that actually meant was that with the older second-generation pill, about 1 in 7,000 women developed a blood clot, whereas with the new pill, about 2 in 7,000 women developed a blood clot. So yes, the physical amount of women receiving a blood clot did go up by 100%, that is true. But if we dig just a little deeper, we see with the older pill was about 0.014%, whereas with the new pill it was about 0.028%, which hardly seems worthy of a breaking news alert. But articles were posted about this misleading statistic, and as a result, naturally tens to hundreds of thousands of women stopped taking this birth control pill. Fast forward 1 year, and that scare was blamed for 13,000 unwanted pregnancies, many of which were teenage pregnancies. A lot of teenage pregnancy stories in this video. Moving on. Did you guys actually know head lice is good for your health? Seems pretty stupid, right? But people actually thought this at one point. And that brings us to the part of this video titled correlation or causation. Or both. Remember, it's usually very easy to determine that two things are correlated from a statistical test. But causation is a completely different thing that isn't so easy to spot. Yet people are very quick to assume that A causes B just because A is correlated to B. Sometimes the logic can be stupidly obvious. Like fast-moving wind turbines are positively correlated to fast wind. As one goes up, the other goes up. But does that mean that fast-moving wind turbines cause fast wind? Well, obviously not, it's the other way around. But in many cases, it isn't this obvious. Like, what if I said that kids who watch violent TV shows are more violent themselves? Does this mean that those shows cause kids to be more violent? I mean, that could be possible and definitely would be an immediate thought for many people. But what if kids who are more violent just happen to watch more violent TV shows? That also seems perfectly reasonable. So we can't just jump to conclusions too early, even though that's what many people would probably do. Or in the Middle Ages, Europeans saw that people who had head lice were normally healthy, whereas people who were sick rarely ever had head lice. As a result, they assumed that lice would cause people to be more healthy, when in reality, head lice is very sensitive to body temperature. So if people had a fever or anything like that, the head lice would find another host. Then on this subject, we have the third cause fallacy, where two correlated events actually don't cause each other at all, but it's rather a third thing causing both. For example, ice cream sales do not cause an increase in heat strokes, even though they are correlated. Hot weather is instead the cause of both of them. Or for the past several decades, atmospheric CO2 has increased along with obesity levels. So does one cause the other? Well, no. Richer populations tend to eat more and also produce more CO2. And sometimes it can just be really unclear what's causing what. Like a while back, they found that students who smoke cigarettes get lower grades. And that could mean smoking causes lower grades. Or maybe it means that getting bad grades causes smoking. Maybe the added stress that comes along with lower grades increases the chance that a student will pick up that first cigarette. That also seems like a reasonable explanation. Or it could be a variety of third factors is actually responsible for both. So even when looking at a statistical test with accurate numbers, it's pretty crazy how far you can still be from the truth. Next, we have a story that will probably have people making assumptions really early. In the 1970s, someone noticed that Berkeley was accepting 44% of male applicants to their graduate school, but only 35% of female applicants.
And let me pause it right quick to address some of y'all saying in the chat room. Yes, you heard that right. You know, I've covered that history many times on this channel. Yes, the high IQ Europeans over here actually did, their ancestors, their Neanderthals, whatever you want to call them. They actually did think that having head lice was healthy. They called them the pearls of God. And, you know, they actually thought that taking a bath would make you sick. I mean, look, the history is here on this channel. We covered it. Look, I tell you what you do. Since we're going to go here. Look up Queen Isabella I and look up how many times that she stated that she took a bath in her entire life. I'm not going to even tell you the times. I'm going to let you do your homework, okay? So you can see what you were dealing with back then with them people and why their behavior towards being cleanly, shall we say, is the way it is now. But I digress. Where we're about to go in this portion of the broadcast right here, I want y'all to pay close attention to this, and I'm going to tell you why it correlates to Black society. Because a lot of y'all, especially if you're a younger person over here, you probably like, well, what does got to do with us, GBS? Pay close attention, my young brothers and sisters. What he's about to read you now, I want you to pay attention to how they use gender war statistics, particularly that damn Democratic Party, to try to cause a divide between Black men and Black women. Sisters, you're going to want to pay close attention to this because there's a broadcast that I have on Patreon. And for those of you who are older, you know who this is. A lot of younger people may not know this sister, but there's a sister named Utrice Lead. Okay, she was a good friend to our honorable ancestor and Grandmaster teacher, Dr. John Henry Clark. And she actually broke this down about how the media manipulate certain stories and headlines. Okay, so now on the one hand, you have the media being deceptive. And then on the other hand, you have these statisticians that know how to manipulate the stats to make one thing seem like, oh my God, the sky is falling. When those of us who are intelligent know to go, wait a minute, The percentages are one thing, but what are the raw numbers and what's the context that is being applied to? Okay, so that's what this has to do with us. I'm gonna get back to it. I want y'all to continue taking notes.
Now, right there, half the internet's like, well, say no more. But only 35% of female applicants. And here we go. That was an actual unedited clip of everyone on the internet. Now, these numbers that we saw are true, but very misleading. When you look at how male and female applicants applied to each program within the graduate school, the assumed bias not only goes away, but kind of flips. Look closely here. In this row, you see there was a high acceptance rate for the program. In fact, women had a much higher acceptance rate, but still overall it was high for everyone. However, way more men applied to this one, whereas more women applied to these programs down here with much lower acceptance rates. So since a higher percentage of women were applying to these programs with higher rejection rates, the overall acceptance of women would be lower guaranteed, even though they are in fact slightly favored across a couple of departments. So either of these headlines could be published with the necessary stats to back them up. And all you gotta do is pick which one you wanna use, toss the other, throw that into an article, put it in bold right on the top, put the cleverly selected statistics down below it to back it up, and you've got yourself a story. This here was an example of Simpson's paradox, where looking at data as a whole tells a totally different story than grouping the data appropriately, which I'm sure many of you know, but I had to include it here. You guys remember the story of the blonde woman who robbed the elderly lady? Well, like I said, this is a famous case, but not for the use of statistics, but rather the misuse of statistics in the courtroom. This was a classic example of the prosecutor's fallacy. Now, this fallacy comes up when people assume that the probability of A given B is the same as the probability of B given A, which I'm sure many of you know is not usually true from this equation. Like if I said behind this curtain is an animal with 4 legs, that's the given. What is the chance that it's a dog? Well, you'd probably do some thinking like, well, it could be a dog, it could be a cat, it could be a cheetah, it could be a lot of other things. And if you had to come up with a number, you might say 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000, or whatever. But if instead I said behind this curtain is a dog, that's the given, what's the chance that it has 4 legs? Well, that's almost a guarantee because most dogs have 4 legs. So you see, switch the given and the question at hand, and the probability can change by a lot. So now let's look at what I said earlier. Turns out there was less than a 1 in 12 million chance that this random couple, who just happened to fit all those descriptions, was innocent. So the jury returned a guilty verdict. This here was...
Now, I want you to pay close attention to this case right here because, see, a lot of people really, when we say the system of white supremacy, a lot of people, they have an idea of how the media plays its part. But what's often overlooked is how math factors into that as well, okay? Math can be used for good and it can be used to do some very evil things as well, okay? So for those that's just coming in, that's the lesson that we're teaching here tonight, okay? You might want to pay close attention to this. You're going to learn something over here because the needle that we're getting ready to thread, family, like I said, if this broadcast don't make you understand exactly what we up against, it just wasn't meant for you to understand it, okay? Because we're going to break it down in plain and simple terms that anybody can ever understand. And we definitely going to thread some needles regarding the current modern day political process that we're all going to be engaged in or not be engaged in, because most of us have selected the candidate that we are going to give our votes to. That's Sir Couch of Chillington. That candidate has some damn good policies, pretty comfortable. So, you know, unless there's some tangibles on the table, a lot of us are going to vote the couch, okay? For those of you that are not, The only thing we're telling you in New Black Media Space is to give your vote to anybody you want, just not them damn Democrats, okay? We're going to thread that needle on exactly why here tonight, but pay attention to this case right here because, see, this may affect a lot of you in the chat room. Some of you may have family members that have gotten railroaded by the system and you probably couldn't figure out here's or tails of why. This right here is going to show you one thing that might have factored into their situation that you may not even be aware of. Let's get back to it.
Wrong. The stats actually showed us that given an innocent couple, the odds that they fit the descriptions was 1 in 12 million. But then I said what the jury had also assumed, that if you switch the given and the question at hand, the probability stays the same, which we just saw can be very wrong. This left side should make sense. Like if I just grabbed a random couple out of a mall, that's the given, there's a very small chance all of these would apply to them. But this is the false assumption that is the prosecutor's fallacy. We're told or given, hey, here's a couple that fits all those descriptions. If maybe 10 people in the entire city fit all of those, given a random one, there's a 1 out of 10 chance that they're guilty, or a 9 in 10 chance of being innocent, not 1 in 12 million. And remember Sally Clark, who was found guilty of murdering her 2 children? This is also a famous case of the misuse of statistics. Turns out bacterial tests had actually been withheld that would reveal more specific information than a simple multiplication of 2 probabilities, which didn't tell the full story at all. Like, it assumed that the 2 events were independent of each other when genetic or environmental factors could have definitely been at play. Like I said, Sally was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, but she only served 3 years when the convictions were finally overturned in early 2003. Up until then though, Sally Clark was widely criticized in the press as a child murderer, and she was never able to recover mentally from the false accusation. A few years after her release, she developed psychiatric problems and died in her home from alcohol poisoning in 2007. I'm going to repeat that for everyone who didn't follow it. A woman lost 2 of her children due to natural causes, was accused of murdering them, was put on trial and found guilty due to a misuse of statistics, spent 3 years in prison, and even after her release was not able to recover mentally and died just about 4 years later. If you guys don't find that story insane, then I don't know what to tell you. And actually the result of this case prompted the Attorney General to order a review of hundreds of other similar cases. Now, because I don't want that to be where we end this video, let's look at one more classic misuse of statistics. This one has to do with how data is represented, and it often involves bar graphs that don't have 0 as their baseline. For example, Fox News once showed a chart detailing the numbers of what would happen if the Bush tax cuts expired. Do you guys see a problem? Yeah, it starts at 34% at the bottom, making a not even 15% increase look like a few 100%. In reality, the chart should look like this. Or take the Terry Schiavo case that occurred about 2 decades ago, which involved a debate of whether a feeding tube should be removed from a woman in an irreversible vegetative state. During that time, CNN posted this graph detailing which political parties agreed with the courts. It seems like Democrats supported the decision significantly more, but because the baseline is not 0, it appears way different than it should. This is what the actual graph would look like. Or in 2015, the White House published a tweet about the increase in students receiving high school diplomas with an extremely misleading graphic. They made around a 10% increase look like nearly 200%. Or in music, there was a chart release showing views between top artists that made Drake look like he was ahead by a large margin, when in fact it was about a 5% lead. Now, I'm guessing the comments on this video will be rather interesting, but remember, these were cherry-picked events, and it's not like everything I said paints the full picture either. I just find it interesting that these numbers can change the way we think about a person. They can peek into some of the most intimate moments of our lives based on our grocery list. They can make very trivial events seem very serious and vice versa, and you don't even need to use wrong numbers for this. But hopefully this showed just how not cut and dry math and statistics can be in the real world outside of a school setting especially.
Now, you heard him break down how statistics can be used to lie, okay? You heard that. From the A to the 0, can't get any more simpler than that, okay? And for those that are just coming in, you might want to go back and review that part of the broadcast if you got here late. And yes, I know YouTube doesn't send out notifications, but this is why you should always check the community tab, because I always post when I'm going live on a community tab, sometimes a day in advance. And you can also check the live section of the channel to know when we're going live. I usually post on my Instagram story when I'm going live, and I also tweet on X or whatever you call it on X when I'm going live as well. Okay. So now I got the white serpent back up here again because we got to circle back around to how this affects us. Okay. As far as these political parties over here, because I got some information for you. I'm going to save that to later on here in the broadcast. A lot of y'all are not going to believe it. It has something to do with the illegal alien invasion. I'm going to call it that, but the media says a migrant crisis. Okay, it's one that our good old Jim Crow Joe, you know, those that say they're riding with Biden, he caused that because it was not like this before this president got in office. Okay, so we're going to get back to how everything that we reviewed here affects us in our community. And family, let me tell you something. Before we do that, you see the white serpent that we have up here, which represents both political parties, by the way, the dominant society, system of white supremacy, whatever you want to call it. But remember when I showed you these bootlegs right here from the Louisiana Legislative Black Caucus and, you know, the Congressional Black Caucus, they're not the only ones. I got their picture up here because these bastards right here are complicit with that, because everything that I just showed you here in this first part of the broadcast, they understand what's going on. See, let me put something on your mind. Have you ever wondered how a lot of these bootlegs like these, they'll go into political office and they struggling just like the average black person in America, okay? Struggling. Or they might just be slightly above the average black person in America. You ever looked at how when they come out, they're filthy rich? Now, I'm going to give you some homework to do because, see, a lot of black people don't really pay attention to this kind of math that we're discussing here tonight, but math is everything, okay? As I showed you earlier in the broadcast, it can be used for nefarious purposes, but it can also be used to uncover the truth and empower you. Do some homework and look up what the base salary is for your congressman in your state. Go look that up, okay? And you tell me if that base salary, by the time they leave, would make them multi-millionaires. I got to put these numbers on your mind here, because, see, we going to get on the system, but we're not going to leave these bootlegs out the way because they know about everything that I presented you. And see, this is why they walk around, you know, like Boule Buffet Master Roland Martin, like they know so much more than the rest of us. See, it's not just, let me break that down. It's not because they're so much smarter than the average person because they got a degree from whatever university. What they're saying in an underhanded way is, I've been around white mommy and white daddy, and I watch the things that they talk about in meetings that you're not president at. So that's what makes me smarter than you. Understand what the bootlegs like Roland Martin are really saying, okay? So I just wanted to put their picture up here because I want you to see